Hello, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Suzanne Podhurst, and I'm delighted to welcome you here to our webinar, Teacher Shortages and the Achievement Gap, Strategies for the 2022-2023 School Year. Before I turn things over to the presenters, just a quick housekeeping note that the chat is disabled, but if you have questions at any time, please submit them via the Q&A and we will see them and address them. Anyway, without further ado, I am delighted to introduce you to my colleagues, Tanya Walker, Senior Executive Director of Educational Partnerships, and Ed Ceja, Western Regional Director here at Tutor.com and the Princeton Review. So Tanya.
Welcome to our Teacher Shortages and the Achievement Gap webinar. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us, just to chat a little bit about teacher shortages and to think about some different strategies, what's going on around the country. But first, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I've actually been in the K-12 industry, if you will, for actually over about 30 years. I actually started my career in nonprofit and then started working in several different companies with K-12. And during that time, I've had the ability to actually consult with different districts, gather great ideas, been able to share those ideas with other districts as well. So hopefully today, some of that experience will run over in what I've learned from other districts and what we find are some strategies that they're using to combat teacher shortage. I'm excited about the webinar and excited about learning from you. So please, this is an interactive webinar and please put your questions in the chat. Ed?
Thank you, Tanya. Great to be here. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name's Ed Ceja. I serve as the Western Regional Director at the Princeton Review and Tutor.com. I've been with the company for over 13 years now. It's gone by in a flash. A little bit about my background is was born in South Los Angeles and raised in East Los Angeles. I'm the first in my family to attend and graduate from college. I'm a proud graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, where upon graduation I was commissioned as a naval officer in the United States Navy, where I served proudly for just over 7 years, making 5 deployments of 6 months or greater to the Western Pacific, Indian Ocean, and Persian Gulf. So I have a lot of sea stories I can tell you, but unfortunately none of them will be included in today's webinar. My focus at the Princeton Review and my priority and my passion is to help students in underserved communities, help them carve a path to college, help families understand the process of how to get to college, whether it comes via helping them prepare for a test, helping them understand about financial aid, helping them understand about tutoring. Very, very happy to be here. I'm very proud of what I do. And with that, I just want to turn it back over to Tanya so we can get started.
Thank you, Ed. So today we will talk about some current teacher shortages. We will talk about the student achievement gap. Then we'll go over some strategies for driving student success, because that's what we really want. And then at the end, we'll have questions. Again, please type in your questions and we will answer those at the end. So Ed, teacher shortage. So America is suffering a nationwide teacher shortage, and teachers have been leaving the profession for years, but the pandemic has caused teachers to really get to their tipping point. So since 2008, we found that teachers have been leaving the profession, and now the reasons why they say they've left, would it be exhaustion, low pay, the benefits, but unfortunately with the pandemic, we're seeing an extreme rise of teacher shortages. And the pandemic is not also saying the teacher shortage, but the teachers actually retaining, coming back for the second year. So because of the teacher shortage, we realize that districts have to think outside the box, because we know that desperate times call for desperate measures. So what are they doing across the state? There's so many things that our districts are doing across the country to actually combat the teacher shortage, because let's be honest, it's been here for a while, but the pandemic has really made it a forefront, if you will, for the country. So what are some of the things that our districts are doing across the country? Well, in Florida, they're allowing veterans to teach without a bachelor's degree. Think about that. It's teachers going into the classroom without a bachelor's degree. In Arizona, they're using virtual math teachers for online education companies. So they're using technology and they're using an online company to teach their students in math. And then in rural areas, they're reducing their school week by 4 days. I would tell you, I attended a conference in Oklahoma, and that was actually one of the strategies they've been using for a while, where they've actually cut their school day to 4. And quite honestly, they actually started finding that their teachers shortage prior to the pandemic, because a lot of their teachers would go to school, go to college in Oklahoma, and then leave to go to Texas. So you're finding teacher shortages in different ways. And then having administrators work as substitutes. I would love in the chat if we can actually have some of our administrators just raise their hands if they actually in the last 2 years had to actually go into the classroom. If you can put a smiley face in the chat or wave your hand to let us know that if you actually had to go into the classroom as a substitute within the last 2 years. Because we're finding that administrators, not only do they have their work at central office, but they're filling in the gaps. And then also combining your classrooms. Imagine those classrooms, some of our classrooms across the country are in auditoriums, so they're combining classes because they're finding that that's another way for them to actually combat the teacher shortage. So there's different ways that the districts are actually doing this. But I want to know from you, what is your state or district strategy to combat teacher shortage? What are you actually doing, your district's doing right now? I see someone said bonuses. That's right. We've actually had some of our schools districts mention that they are actually providing bonuses for teachers to actually apply and become teachers. They're providing bonuses as well as retention bonuses, because we also know that the retention rate for some of our teachers, about 40 to 50% of our new teachers do not return for the second year. So we also have bonuses, retention bonuses for some of our districts. Anything else? Relocation packages, that's right. We've had some of our districts that provide relocation packages for teachers. And there are some networks, they call it the Whisper Network, where superintendents will actually speak to each other if they know of educators that are going from one state to another. They will actually inform neighboring districts or neighboring states that they have educators that are coming in their state. Anything else? Suzanne, do you see anything?
Yeah, I see one more. We've attended recruitment fairs at local colleges looking for prospective teachers, but that was not successful.
Yes, yeah. You know, we find the recruitment efforts are all over the place, where from billboards, I've actually seen billboards for teachers. I've actually witnessed where the newspapers all out of the way out strategies to actually combat the teacher shortage are getting someone in the seats, if you will. But you're not alone. There's so much that districts are doing, and we'll be able to see how that works in the next year. But what happens? You have the teacher shortage. You have ways that, teacher shortage is something that's been brewing for a while. And as I stated, the pandemic has now got it to the point where it's a tipping point for us. But what is the result of that? The achievement gap, student achievement gap. We've always had an achievement gap, but the pandemic has unfortunately widened the achievement gap for our students. And the unfinished learning is real and is inequitable. So the unfinished learning has now gotten to the place where we find that the existing achievement gap has widened. So the data that shows that obviously the last two decades of learning improvements have been wiped away from our students. It's been wiped away for the last 2 years. And so it's almost as if we are in a position, and I say we, because here at the Princeton Review, Tutor.com, we are partners in education, that we are actually working to how will we actually combat that? It is now as sharpest decline since 1990, sharpest decline since 1990 for our students. And students of color and low-income students were disproportionately adversely affected. That should be no surprise. However, just imagine most of our students in those areas, you think of technology, the use of technology, internet connection, all those things are helping to unfortunately widen that student gap. And research also shows that it's going to take about 5 years for students to catch up. 5 years. Now we have teacher shortage. It's going to take students 5 years to catch up. And then we have our biggest decline in math and English. I hope I'm creating a storm here for you. So now let's put the families in there. What was the impact on our families? Well, with the pandemic, we found that our schools and parents were overwhelmed and ill-equipped for the pandemic. They were overwhelmed. Imagine your parents that are also who have struggling with their loss of their jobs. They might have struggled with the loss of a family member. And now they have combined to that they actually are now teachers for their students, sometimes multiple students in their home at one time. So it is the pandemic made the learning process rely heavily on parents. And so what type of support were we able to provide for those parents and those children at home? But it also, students work mostly online rather than using using online tools to supplement their learning. Again, what does that add up to? Additional learning loss for our students. Because along with that, you have your parents, your students that are also working with, again, I said loss of jobs. You have social isolation for both the parents and the students. And now we're asking parents to do what our educators do every single day tirelessly. We're asking them to step in and teach their students. That's a heavy load. That's a very heavy load for our families. I don't know about you, but I would tell you my heart went out to several of our families that I've listened to districts across the country where parents had a very big, a greater respect for our teachers because they were able to now see and feel the experience of teacher and how the classroom management, if you will, being able to manage all of their students. But it was an impact on families. So we have teacher shortage, an achievement gap. Now we have an impact on our families, where families are now stepping in without the proper equipment that they need. So what's going to happen in the long run? So we mentioned it's going to take about 5 years before we are able to recover, but there are some long-ranging effects from this, from the teacher shortage. So I call it the pandemic aftermath. So what are the long-term effects? So you have teacher shortage, the achievement gap, and most importantly, the future community economic impact. We know by studies that the studies have shown that students who have a bachelor's degree or have some type of additional education, that they actually increase their salaries over a lifetime, as opposed to those students who might have a high school diploma or not. So, but imagine the economic impact for this pandemic. Students who are not prepared, to go on to college or they want to go into any other secondary profession. So what we're finding is that studies have found from McKinsey and Company that there's going to be at least $128 billion earning loss per year from those students in the pandemic. Think about that. That's a lot of money, especially when we think about the times that we're in right now, where housing is not affordable for some of our students and our families that we serve. Think about the hope that we have for our students. What can we do for our students, and how can we actually help to make sure that these students are equipped after the pandemic, after these 5 years. I like to say we need to imagine education for the long term, reimagining education for the long term, because right now we're at a storm. So my question to you, let me go Ed to the next one. How is your district addressing the achievement gap? I have one that actually says they're hiring coaches. They're using actual retired teachers to come back and fill in the gap as coaches. Suzanne, do you have anything else on your end?
I'm seeing one that says we've tried paying our teachers a stipend to provide tutoring after hours, along with using local college students to provide in-person tutoring.
Awesome.
And many students are not able to attend sessions during the offered times.
Yes, we're finding that tutoring is one of the ways that research has shown that you actually address the achievement gap. Tutoring is definitely one of the ways that we're finding that districts are using. I have someone else that says supplemental instruction. Yes, supplemental instruction is another way that some of our districts are helping to address the achievement gap with our students. Because of course, we need to have strategies in place to address the achievement gap. And that comes with large scale interventions. And when we start thinking about large scale interventions, my colleague Ed is going to speak to you not only about large scale interventions, but also talk about some of the district and school-wide solutions that we found that helps drive student success. Ed?
Thank you, Tanya. That was some really valuable and very important information. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Let me talk a little bit about some of the large-scale interventions that are occurring. As we've been in this pandemic for the last couple years, and now that we're transitioning, hopefully into in-person for all schools across the country. But as you may know, President Biden called on all schools to leverage their American Rescue Plan funding to expand programming and services to help students make up for lost learning time and succeed. This is obviously gathering attention at the highest levels of the federal government. For example, in the past year, the Department of Education launched an initiative to bring in a minimum of 250,000 tutors to American schools in order to boost academic recovery. Clearly, that is a challenge to bring in that many tutors. If we have a teacher shortage, how are you going to bring in that many tutors in person? It's going to be very challenging. And clearly the research shows that as a solution to help close this much needed gap in achievement is that research shows that high quality tutors and mentors can really impact student achievement, well-being, and overall success, which means not only graduation from high school, but moving on to the college, to get a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and just to really be able to be successful. So I think this is a real key situation. This is a real important time for all of us in education. We've never faced this type of challenge before. We've all faced many, many challenges, but never anything like this. The impact of tutoring, which is really important. I think there's been a lot of studies, but at the end of the day, we know based on our research that students with access to personalized learning make greater academic progress than peers without it. That is clear. That's been that way regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or not. When students have access to personalized tutoring, they perform better in school. However, more specific to the pandemic, one-to-one tutoring is helpful for combating COVID learning loss. We see that every day right now is what we're seeing, what we're hearing from our district partners. In addition to that, we know that daily individualized tutoring can help students who are behind grade level. It allows them to re-engage. It allows them to get back up to speed. And like we've said, it helps them to, close that achievement gap. We know that training of teachers in school day and out of school tutoring strategies can help. We know that a lot of teachers have tried to work after hours to help support their students, but that is not always feasible anymore as students become involved in activities and things after school where they're not able to attend any type of scheduled session. But tutoring during the school day tends to have a larger impact than tutoring after school. But again, as I mentioned, there is a lot of challenges with that. So that's just a little bit of the impact of tutoring and how important that is. So what I want to talk about is at Tutor.com in the Princeton Review, we have implemented strategies for driving student success. Some of you may be asking, well, where are these strategies from? Like, what do you mean? And like, how did you get these? Well, the Princeton Review has been around for more than 40 years. Tutor.com has been around for 22 years. So the first response is that, in our 22 years of experience at Tutor.com, we've conducted significant amounts of research. We have developed case studies. We've launched various, projects with partners, with educators, with institutions of higher learning. We've had discussions with district partners at the leadership level, at the school site level, at the community level, and all of that has really resulted in us implementing certain strategies that will help drive student success. So what I want to do now is go over 6 of them that I think are very important, that I think you would be interested in learning a little bit more about. Just to highlight though, these strategies are built to drive student success. These strategies are not the solution for teacher shortage. I think that's a solution that has to be done district by district, state by state, with whatever works within that area. But these are solutions that will help drive student usage because there is a teacher shortage. So let me go through these one by one. The first strategy that I think is very, very important that helps drive student success is that we want to be able to support teachers. We're not here to take the teacher's role. We want to create an extension of that classroom, because when you create an extension of that teacher's classroom, you're able to provide additional academic support, and you're also able to actually get your teachers some off hours. Teachers shouldn't have to worry about, my student has a question at 11 o'clock at night, what do I do? We don't want to put teachers in that position, so we want to provide support that's an extension of the classroom that allows students to get help whenever they want it. We don't want to create more work for staff. That's clearly any type of a tutoring program should not be defined as this is more work for teachers. It should be designed as it's not more work for teachers, but it's going to help your students. We have always found with our district partners that the most successful tutoring programs are when teachers can encourage students to use it, not create more work, but just encourage students to use it. For example, if you're an English teacher and you have, an essay that's due for your students, encourage them to use, Tutor.com as the essay drop-off as a means to submit their first draft. We found when that's encouraged by teachers, we find that the quality of the papers that are turned in, of the essays that are turned in, improve drastically, which improves grades, which is obviously what we're here to do in driving student success. At the same time, we want teachers to have access to quality student data. Did they, if your students saw a tutor, like how did that session go? Was it productive? Well, we want to make sure that teachers can have access to data to review a session if they wanted to, just to make sure that their students are using the service and how often they're using it. That's very valuable information for teachers to have, so we can provide that to them. We find that to be a very successful strategy in support of teachers that drive student success. The second strategy that we thought was really important to talk about was personalized learning. We want to ensure that that students have support tools that are accessible for all students at all ages and all academic stages. We know that we talked about the achievement gap, but tutoring programs should be available for all students regardless of where they're at. Clearly, if a student is struggling academically, we want to ensure that they have access to tutoring. But if let's say you have a student who's somewhere in the middle, let's say they have a C in a particular class and they're really working hard to get that B, but they have some questions, before an upcoming exam. they should have access to tutoring whenever they want it. You know, let's say you have a higher achieving student who is taking some AP classes because they want to go to a, you know, highly competitive college or university, and they may need help at some point because they're studying over this weekend because they have a test next week. They should be able to have access to support at all times. The other thing about personalized learning is that tutoring, we see that online tutoring can come in a lot of different fashions. But what's important to note is that we find that the most successful programs like Tutor.com are when you're able to provide students with choices, and that means that they can conduct their sessions either via voice or via chat. We know that a lot of secondary students prefer chat, but a lot of the younger kids, or maybe you're an English learner, really value being able to speak directly with that tutor. So that's an important factor to drive student success. We want to ensure also that access to tutoring is available not only during the school day, but after school and the weekends. We know that students now during distance learning developed very unusual study habits, and those study habits seem to continue and have kept on. So we have students who study at a lot of different hours. I know in my home, I have 2 college kids, but they just, when they were in high school during the pandemic, they studied at like crazy hours. And it's very important that we're able to support them when they're studying. It's key in a tutoring program to drive student success that someone is able to provide highly qualified and vetted tutors. This is really key because the world of online tutoring has evolved to be something quite large as compared to prior to the pandemic. Tutor.com takes pride in having rigorously vetted tutors. We think it's the most rigorous vetting process, and we take pride in that. We also want to make sure that students look for asynchronous services that they can utilize when they're not able to connect live. For example, if you have an essay that you need some help with that you want to drop off and receive feedback on, but you're not able to connect live, you can actually send that essay to us and then go offline. And by the next morning, typically you will have feedback on that essay. So we need to work around the students' needs, and this is something that's very important in order to drive student success. The next strategy is qualities of effective intervention. We want to make sure that if a district or a school is working with tutors, especially from an online perspective, that those tutors are able to provide accurate content. We want to make sure that tutors can appropriately clarify student questions. We want to ensure that they identify the appropriate approach. How do they actually solve that problem? How are they working with that student to best and most efficiently solve that problem? Are they asking Socratic type questions? Are they asking leading questions to help understand maybe where that student is in this process and help guide them to understand that solution? Are we managing their time effectively? Are we taking too much of their time, or are we just basically working with them to solve that question, that concept, and then see if they have anything else they need, and then moving on? We always want to ensure that professionalism and respect is involved. That is a great way to not only help students, but also to get students to come back and continue to use a tutoring service. We obviously want to understand and demonstrate familiarity with not only a school policy, but a district policy, maybe what classroom tools are utilized, and any procedures that are important that are maybe unique to that particular school. And of course, if there's anything that needs to be, any type of feedback that's required, we want to make sure that we provide that to a school, to a district partner in a timely manner. This is very important. This is stuff that I think we've developed over the last 22 years to really make this a very smooth, seamless, but very learning type of process. Equity, which is a common term that's used a lot nowadays, we think that's an important factor to drive student success. We want to ensure that support is available to all students, including those who are most in need, including English language learners, students with special needs, students that are homeless. Anyone who's in need we need to ensure that they have access to the same high quality tutoring that someone who has the resources can afford. Our programs, when we work with school districts, when we work with schools, when we work with states, we want to ensure that they're provided to students at no cost. So families in need don't have to be concerned about paying for such services. they can get the same high quality. And if you're considering this type of service, I think it's very important, and we highly recommend that you engage with providers who understand the needs of the community. Communities have changed so much. They're much more diverse than they used to be, and I think it's important to engage with a provider who can understand that and provide you the right type of service. Excuse me. The next strategy, which I think is a real key strategy, is the utilization of technology. I think one thing about the pandemic and the world of distance learning is that internet access and devices have become a lot more available to students. I know pre-pandemic, not a lot of districts were one-on-one with devices. Not a lot of districts had internet access. I still think there are probably some districts that are not one-on-one to devices, but I think it's very few. I do believe there are still some districts that have issues with internet access. We see a lot of districts who have partnered with, providers like, AT&T and Verizon to have hotspots that are available. We've even seen such amazing strategies as school districts installing hotspots in school buses so that students can have access to internet while they're commuting to school on that bus. We've also seen school districts that park those same buses in communities during off hours so that students can have access to the internet at all times. So I think that's fantastic. And I think the technology piece is slowly but surely getting solved, but I think we still have a ways to go. We completely understand that districts prefer and look for a single sign-on environment for students. Districts don't want students to go outside of the learning management system to access the service. They want to be able to have everything within, create a single sign-on so it's easier for students to access, and it actually drives students to that service much more. We understand also that the safeguarding of student data, privacy, and security is a key point right now with states, with schools, with districts across this country. And it's important that you work with a provider that can actually provide that understands that and is willing to work with you on that. And then finally, we want to make sure that we can provide teachers, we can provide administrators with utilization data to look at potential interventions. If a tutor had a session with a student this morning, and in the tutor's opinion, was there a type of intervention that could be necessary? Is that being communicated to that school? We do that, and I want to make sure that it's clear that that's a very important aspect to tutoring, especially when we're working with students right now. And I think the last one that I have for driving student success is the ability to promote college, career, and military readiness. I think with the pandemic and the learning loss and the achievement gap, we want kids to go to college. That's something that the Princeton Review has lived by for more than 40 years. That's something that Tutor.com has lived by for more than 20 years. This is a process that's very important. The process can be complicated. It can be difficult to understand. So we want to ensure that services like Tutor.com have a really good understanding for families to better understand that college process. When do you apply? What if I have an essay? Like, how does that work? Can I send you my essay and can you look at it? Well, of course. We are very busy right now with college support, college essays, admissions essays, scholarship essays, because students need that feedback right now. We also want to ensure that students, if needed, have access to high quality standardized test prep. We know that some states do not look at universities within certain states, do not consider SAT or ACT scores for admissions, but there's still, I believe it's over 1,000 universities across this country that are considered test optional. And what we see at the Princeton Review is about 70% of applicants to the test optional schools are still submitting a test score. So is SAT and ACT preparation not important? Not really. It actually is important if you're considering applying to that type of university. And the ability to have high quality standardized test prep from the Princeton Review within Tutor.com, I think is really valuable for a lot of students. In addition to that, as more and more students want to go into the military, so we have also added ASVAB test preparation into Tutor.com to better help support students who are interested in pursuing a military career. So question, those are the strategies that we came up with that we were anxious to share with you. Which strategy to support student success resonates most as a need for your district? Would love to hear any input from you. Suzanne, do you see anything?
Yeah, I'm seeing one response so far. Support for teachers. You can hear me. Yeah. Support for teachers is one of our top priorities. Teachers are under a lot of pressure to be available 24/7, and we want to help alleviate that burden on them.
That's great. That's great. I know that speaking to district partners, the college and career readiness is really, and military is really, really important because, you know, because we're coming out of this pandemic, we know that a lot of students during the pandemic didn't apply to college, you know, took a gap year. But now that we're back in person, you know, there is a drive, there is incentive, there is a push to get more students to apply to college, more students to look at college opportunities. So I think having those resources are really important. I hear that often from district partners. Is there anything else? Okay, I think for the next slide, Tanya, is that you? Yes.
That is me. That's me. I'm actually going to wrap us up. Thank you, Ed, for a very great overview of different strategies. You know, someone did message me privately and they said they want something that's consistent, that's going to be a part of their school culture, that's something that they can implement as a part of their culture and will stay for years to come. So that's a big piece, because we know in summary that the teacher shortage doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. It doesn't. We unfortunately don't have a magic wand to actually have all the teachers appear. It's not going away anytime soon. As you were talking about the different strategies, I reflected on years ago working with a university where one of their strategies was to actually have grants. You have some colleges and universities that have grants to encourage students to go into the field of education, and providing seniors and juniors in high school the opportunity to shadow teachers or take classes during the summer, and which was a great initiative to actually get some of our students, especially African-American males, to go into the field of teaching. So that is one of the other strategies, but again, that was years ago, and it's the teacher shortage is continuing. But we also understand that because of that, we still have that impact on learning loss, and the learning loss is there, but it's much more effective from those students from lower incomes and underserved communities. So that's always been a challenge for us for here in America. It's always been a challenge, but now we've actually, it's much more of a challenge now. And so because of that, districts are now having to look at different ways, alternative ways for learning. And so, as you mentioned, using Tutor.com is one of several different ways. Teacher shortages to help actually become a partner with teachers. And so Tutor.com and other online support that we may have, or others help to support our teachers. And then most importantly, we learned the research, as you mentioned, tutoring works. Tutoring works for students. Where students, meeting students where they are, where students have the opportunity to connect with someone, an expert, and ask additional questions. I was that child who may not necessarily ask a question in class, but I would leave that class still not connecting, and would go home and just read the book or read a chapter, and it just did not connect. So tutoring works because students have the ability to actually connect with an expert anytime, any place that they want. So Ed, you mentioned Tutor.com. So I want to briefly talk a little bit about who we are. And Tutor.com, as Ed mentioned, we are a part, a service of the Princeton Review, and we've been around since, for a long time, I'll say that. Tutor.com has been around for over 20 years. And unfortunately, a lot of our school districts did not know us because they didn't need us. So when the pandemic unfortunately came upon us, now learning that more of our districts are looking for solutions, especially online solutions to support their students. So Tutor.com is a service that will provide students with tutoring 24/7. Students and teachers can use it in the classroom. This could be a part of the school day, a part of the school day with the teachers, or as we actually mentioned earlier in the webinar, the impact on families, where now parents can also have this as a tool at any time. So imagine, as we just mentioned, the impact on parents, and parents now taking the role as a facilitator or a teacher for their students during the pandemic. Imagine if they had Tutor.com, where they can actually say to their student, connect to an expert, connect to Tutor.com, because it's available 24/7. And it's user-friendly, And we've been doing this for a while. We've been doing this for a long time with one-to-one tutoring, where we're proud to say we have over 23 million sessions to date with our districts. So what is it? What distinguishes us from the other companies, if you will? Well, the one thing that we're a trusted partner with Princeton.com. We're a trusted partner. We have expansive experience with working with students, and we have the experience with working in large districts, as Ed mentioned, in LA Unified, Fairfax County, and we're proud to say that we also have a state partnership with New Hampshire. So we have experience with working with large scale districts, but we also pride ourselves with how we vet our teachers, our tutors. We take pride in knowing that when we give them an exam, we will not pass a tutor along unless they have actually passed that subject exam, which they're asking to tutor. And we also state that we have over 150,000 registrants that want to become tutors with us, but less than 2% of them actually go through the process of being vetted with our exams, through our criminal background checks, etc. So we pride ourselves on how we vet our tutors. And then also with the different ways that we actually connect with our students. We have two-way voice. So as Ed mentioned, you have students and parents that are now able to connect with a tutor by voice. I'm working with your student would like to work on their sight words, they're working on reading passages. You can actually speak to a tutor. And as Ed mentioned, our older students love to chat. That's what they love to do. They love to get on the chat box, but the voice option is available for students, to actually connect with a tutor. And then the Princeton Review. Who else knows college prep and test prep better than the Princeton Review? With Tutor.com, your students will also have access to ACT and ACT prep, self-paced, that's a part of that, and college admissions tools as well from the Princeton Review. So you have not only the best tutors, the best test prep, but you have the most experienced online tutoring company with Tutor.com, the Princeton Review. Because in essence, we bring you with real-time data and analytics with all of our partners, exceptional customer service, we pride ourselves with our customer success management team. And lastly, our support 24/7. Your students can actually get support and support 24/7. So why is Tutor.com the best? Well, Tutor.com is the best because of our partners and districts that utilize us and know that we are a partner that's here to stay, that's going to be a partner with them as they look at different strategies to support their students and their teachers. And they look at us, some of them have actually had one of our students say to us that we were the Batman to their Robin. That Tutor.com is the Batman to their Robin.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tanya. And just to kind of go into it just a little bit about, data analytics. We live in a data-driven world, and I know school districts are very, very interested in seeing, does it work? How does it work? How's that going so far? We provide our partners with access, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to what we call a client portal. This is where, depending on who you want to provide the access to, could be administrators, could be teachers, could be district office personnel, whoever you want will have access to this client portal, which will provide fast facts. How's the program going in real time? How many sessions have you had? How many, how much is it being used? You'll also have the ability to pull on-demand reports, which is part of our professional development. We'll show you how to use it. It's rather simple to access these reports. And in those reports, you can see everything about student usage. You can actually drill down and see transcripts of every session, because every session that occurs between our tutors and your students gets recorded. Students have access to those recordings whenever they want, but so does anyone who has access to the client portal. We'll also provide you with a monthly report, which is really detailed usage data. It looks really pretty. It's all in graph format, but this is where you're going to be able to see significant usage information, such as who's using the service, when and what time of day they're using the service, what subjects are they using the service for. This is where students you'll also be able to see all comments from students regarding their experience with Tutor.com. Every student is provided with the opportunity to provide feedback at the end of every session. We record those comments and we'll provide them to you at the end of every month. I spend a lot of my day when these reports come out reading what students say, and it's really rewarding and enlightening to hear what students have to say about the service. You'll have all that shared with you on a monthly basis. In addition to that, we have an additional form of feedback in what we call predictive insights and early alerts. What that is, early alerts are really a way to identify any type of potential intervention situation. Our tutors are required to submit a report upon completion of every session. Reason being is we want to identify any type of potential intervention that might be happening so that we can advise you right away about that particular session, and that way you can take any appropriate action as needed. So one of the things about Tutor.com is we believe in data and analytics, and we want to provide you with as much transparency regarding usage, regarding data, so that you can be fully informed on how the program is helping reduce that achievement gap. In addition to that, I think this might be one of the last slides we have, is I want to briefly introduce everyone. Very excited to do this, to what we call LEO. This is brand new. LEO stands for Learner Engagements Online. And what LEO is, it's a new academic support platform that was built from the ground up by our team at Tutor.com of online learning experts, with input from educators, education leaders, web developers. It's been years in the making, but we are so excited to launch this. We recently launched it in the world of higher education, and can't wait to get this out to K-12. It will be coming out shortly. Basically, what LEO does, it's a one learning hub for all. You're obviously able to access Tutor.com via LEO, but let's say you have an in-person tutoring program that you also utilize, after school. You can have those. You can bring that in-person tutoring program into LEO. They can use the platform. The tutors have access to the classroom that they can utilize through Tutor.com. Let's say you have students who want to set up a study session because they have a test coming up and they just want to go through it together. Through our meeting spaces, they're able to access our classroom. Let's say that you have a teacher who wants to set up a study session, prior to a midterm or something like that. You can access that. But it's really important. You're still going to have access to the 24/7 on demand. You're still going to have access to voice and text sessions, but it just enhances everything. It brings everything under one umbrella. There's significant ability to get you more data on usage because you can bring in your in-person other tutoring programs. Those tutors are able to schedule within LEO. There's just lots of different features, and we're just really excited. We're going to be sending out more and more details as we get closer to launch, but I just wanted to ensure that everyone is aware of that because it's super exciting and we can't wait to share it with everyone. Also, before we close out, I wanted to remind everyone that we have a fall series of webinars. This is only the first one. but also want to remind you that October 27th, we're going to have another webinar, which is updates to the college admissions process, test optional and beyond. I think this is going to be really interesting because we're going to have some experts here who really have some insight to the brand new digital SAT, and also talk about, what's happening and what's any updates to the college admission process. Should students take the SAT? Should they take the PSAT? Should they take the ACT? What's being required? What's not? So very valuable. And we've got some of our colleagues on this panel who are already working on it. And I'm so excited to see this webinar. In addition to that, in November, we'll close our fall series with an equity analysis. It's insights from a year of online tutoring across K-12 programs. We really want to give you some insight and some feedback on maybe lessons learned from working with so many district partners on the efficacy of online tutoring. How is it? How's it going? What can we do to better support students? And we've got a really talented panel for that one. So really encourage you to register for those. Can't wait to see it. And then we'll come out with in the spring with a new series for spring. Can't wait to see that. And with that, I wanted to see if there's anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask that maybe we didn't mention or want to get some clarification. Would love to entertain any questions at this point. Suzanne, do you see anything in the chat?
I'm just looking. Yes, I see one. Will it be possible to get a copy of the deck? And yeah.
Yes, we can get that, and we will send that out to everyone who has attended. And we hope that you can use that. Anything else?
Well, I just want to chime in and say that Tanya and Ed's email addresses are there too. So if you think of other questions afterwards.
Good point.
Please
feel free to reach out to us. Happy to speak with you. Happy to have a discussion. If you're more interested in Tutor.com, we can certainly provide you with a more detailed demo of the service, chat about it, learn more about the needs of your district. We'd be happy to have that discussion with you at any time.
Absolutely. We look forward to talking to you.
Anything else? Well, great. Thank you so much for spending a portion of your Thursday with us. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you so much.
Take care.